This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey now, welcome to a wonderful Monday edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Michael Remis in the host chair. One last time here before Hustler makes his return tomorrow. Hustler's on an epic streak here of championship caliber events. Was at the RBC Canadian Open, went to a Jays game, and then took in Canada soccer. And this is coming off with the heels of I'm going to Dallas for Jets Stars round 2 in the playoffs. He'll be back tomorrow, but so much to discuss here. Stanley Cup Final. What a game on Friday. The Oilers and Corey Perry tying it with 17 seconds left to force overtime, but ultimately losing in double OT to Brad Marchand and the Florida Panthers. And it seems like if you want to be in the Cup Final, got to have a designated old guy. And I hesitate calling 37 old or Corey Perry 40 old, but in NHL terms, that's getting up there. And Perry doing it for the Oilers, but Marchand answering back for Florida. Game 3 tonight. CFL kickoff took place throughout the weekend. But Saturday, I got a good look at the Bombers' next opponent. Thursday here, Princess Auto Stadium against the BC Lions. Nathan Rourke looking pretty good. So they'll be here Thursday. We're going to be teeing up for that all week. Can't wait for CFL in Winnipeg back in action. And we did have some Jets news as well. It's the offseason. Rumors, reports, leaked photos. Going to be discussing it all with Connor Hrabchak. And shout out to the Sea Bears. They lost on Friday. Big win for them Saturday. Big comeback win in target time. This Jalen Harris they signed making an impact. And Simi Shiddu's coming back Wednesday. So 2 stars back for the Sea Bears. They're home Wednesday and Sunday this week. The Gold Eyes had a rain out yesterday. They're off, away this week. They'll be back next week. And next week is Gold Eyes night with Winnipeg Sports Talk and the Gold Eyes Patio Party, like under 10 tickets left. WinnipegSportsTalk.com. And you can get tickets there. Don't miss out. Going to be a very fun time. Some great guests coming up on the show. Blue Bombers play-by-play voice, Derek Taylor. We're going to preview week 1, preview the season, the expectations for the team coming into the year after losing their 3rd straight Grey Cup, their 5th appearance. The Grey Cup is here, so big year. And Murat of The Athletic, he's got his Jets mailbag out. There are a number of Jets topics. I'm excited to dive in with him. And Tyler Yaremchuk of Oilers Nation is in Florida for Game 3 tonight. We'll be touching on that too. Before I bring in Connor Hrabchak, shout out to the sponsors: Rolly's Transfers, St. Vital Dental, Canadian Club, Manitoba Battery, Princess Auto, Aikens Lake, F Apparel, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Breezy Ben, Winnipeg Gold Eyes, Cinnaboya Downs. Live racing kicks off tomorrow. Hustler and I will be having our picks at the end of the show. And also Prairie Toyota Dealers, Ben Moss Jewelers. Connor Hrabchak, you saw him yesterday. WST Sunday Live from Winnipeg Beach, tethering to his phone. Check that out. You missed it yesterday. Yeah. Connor, what's going on? Welcome back.
Thank you. Yes, it was a great weekend. Thank you to everyone who joined WST Sunday Live. It was classic, Remo, because I had 3 to 4 bars LTE all weekend long. And then as soon as we hit live, it goes down to 1 bar LTE. And we're barely, scraping by streaming WST Sunday Live from Winnipeg Beach. But no, it was good. There was some Jets topics that we had to talk about that we'll talk about on the show today as well. Jonathan Taves, there's a report there. There's a report on Nikolai Ehlers as well. and CFL kickoff. You mentioned that the RBC Canadian Open. There was the French Open in tennis. That was an incredible game. So it was a fun weekend camping. And we had the TV going there watching the Cup final and other various sports throughout the weekend. So thanks to everyone who joined WST Sunday Live. And I'm fired up to be back here on what is going to be an awesome week. Bombers game week back at Princess Auto Stadium this week. I'm fired up, Remis.
Yeah, UFC also on Saturday I took in as well. So while watching the Lions and Snoop Dogg performing. So it is June 9. Lots to get to. Want to talk on the Cup final? This Cup final, Edmonton, against Florida, the rematch, living up and going beyond all expectations. These are the two best teams in the league. You're seeing elite players like Connor McDavid with the shimmy, toe drag, set up to Draisaitl, absolute filthy. Corey Perry scoring in dying seconds, giving them their Manitoba miracle moment, almost if they would have came out with that win. Brad Marchand tying it up. This series, it could be 1-1. You could make your argument it should be 2-0 either way. But you can say these are two awesome hockey teams with excellent hockey, great entertainment.
Yeah, and look, if we're not emotionally invested in who's winning this series, you want them to be good games. You want them to go to overtime, and both of them have gone to overtime. You're rooting for a good game, and that's where I'm at. And I don't know, Remis, that Connor McDavid toe drag and then pass to Leon Draisaitl, I was just laughing watching that. It's like he's playing a different sport. And a locked in Connor McDavid who's chasing his first ever Stanley Cup. This is a very fun series, and he's going up against a team with that gritty skill that it seems like every general manager is going to be paying a premium for come July 1st. So this is such a fun Stanley Cup Finals matchup. I've thoroughly enjoyed the first two games. And watching Connor McDavid, in the regular season, when the Jets aren't playing and there's a bunch of teams in action, I'm watching the Oilers because I want to watch the best hockey player in the world. And that is such an incredible, goal or assist on the Leon Draisaitl goal that he had, and so many other plays throughout the game. He's so much fun to watch. He plays so much. I think he was their time on ice leader in the game as a forward, which is pretty impressive. So such a fun series so far. Game 3's tonight in Florida. Looking forward to see if the Oilers can bounce back on the road with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins being a game time decision. We'll see if they have to play without him. Yeah,
I'll get the updates from Tyler. He wasn't on the ice to start practice, did appear later, but has been game time. And you mentioned that McDavid play. They asked McDavid yesterday, saying how, if you're a kid, or how do you tell a kid in his driveway how to replicate that? And he stammered through an answer and tried to be humble about it. And Leon just steps in and he's like, you can't teach that. You can't do that. There's no one else. There's no one else that can do that play. Again, dancing around this is elite Selke. Players.
Barkov just won the Selke. He stepped around him. And then Ekblad's a top pair defenseman. He stepped around I don't know.
Like it was nothing. We should mention former Winnipeg Jet. He was on the Jets last year. It does seem like so long ago. Nate Schmidt got bought out, but what an impact this guy is having. He was a healthy scratch for the Jets at times last year, but here he is in the Stanley Cup final. 4 assists in 2 games? And these aren't empty netters or secondary assists. He's making sauce passes on 2-on-1s. He's, nice to see Nate Schmidt. So if you're looking for a Jets focus and you don't want to cheer for Evander Kane or Mark Stewart, you do have the Paul Maurice, Nate Schmidt, and Paul Maurice, Nate Schmidt, and Jamie Compon. But how about Nate Schmidt making an impact here?
Oh man, it's crazy to see. It's like you get into these Stanley Cup final games and we talk about McDavid and Draisaitl and Barkov and Bennett and all the star power in this series. And then a guy like Nate Schmidt just has an incredible first 2 games with 4 assists. A lot of them being, like you said, primary assists. The one to Sam Bennett, saucer pass 2-on-1, springs him on a breakaway. There was one on a power play where he fired it through the seam backdoor to Brad Marchand, who just had to corral it and shoot it on net. And he had a wide open net to shoot at. He's creating goals with these passes. And it's really impressive to see. And even from a third pair, Nate Schmidt was a fan favorite here, is very liked in the locker room, in the fan base. So he's an easy guy to root for. And like I said, this series is 1-1. Both games have gone to overtime. So If you're rooting for Florida, Nate Schmidt is definitely the guy that it's very easy to root for him. And he's playing, I mean, very good hockey for a third pair defenseman right now in this series.
Yeah, the guy forgot Dmitry Kulikov as well, former Jet, and one player, Paul Maurice, he's at it again, Connor. They asked him today about Barkov's 0 points in the final. He's got so many jokes, Paul Maurice saying, we're trading him. So we'll see if Barkov can step up and get on the score sheet tonight. A lot of Jets news over the weekend. We were hoping for some, and this one happened Saturday morning. Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects wrote in his What We're Hearing Draft Combine Buzz column, as it is the draft, or was the draft combine. There's no in-person draft, so a lot of the teams having representatives there, except for Vancouver. They don't seem to have a GM. They don't have a GM there for whatever reason, but a lot of other teams are there. A lot of buzz happening, and Cam Robinson writing on Elite Prospects. 2 years removed from his last NHL game, there's some distractingly loud buzz that Jonathan Toews will make his return to the league with the Winnipeg Jets. It would be a great story if it happens, and at this point, they appear to be the favorites to land him. So what do you think of this Jonathan Toews report? Is Cam Robinson saying favorite to land him in Winnipeg?
Yeah, this is the first report we've gotten. So, I mean, like the Coolbet lines, you look at that and they have Jonathan Toews as the favorite, or the Winnipeg Jets as the favorite to land Jonathan Toews. So that is, just kind of the assumption is that the Jets are the favorite to land Jonathan Toews. But hearing it from the draft combine, that a lot of people are chatting about it, that it's something that is going around in and around those circles is very interesting to hear. And it does seem like at this very moment, that Jonathan Toews will, maybe not become a Winnipeg Jet, but they're definitely the favorites to land him. And this is the first, solidified report that we've gotten that there are actually rumors going around that this might be the case. So we've talked a lot about, Jonathan Toews' fit in the lineup, how it impacts Adam Lowry, him coming back and missing the first 2 months of the season with his hip surgery, needing more center depth down the middle for this Winnipeg Jets team. It's something that we covered a lot on WST Sunday Live, but definitely interesting to hear a report that things are going around Remis, because so far it had just kind of been speculation in terms of, well, this is his hometown and the Jets need center depth. So there's a natural fit there, but seems like people higher up around the league are talking about it as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Coolbet. The line, I don't know if Coolbet saw this report, because if Cam is saying they're the favorites, I mean, plus 250 is certainly a favorable line here. And Jonathan Toews, you mentioned, the Jets, Adam Lowry out to start the season. We've been talking about second line center for a while. I'm curious where they would have Jonathan Toews slotting in. Are you going to count on him to be that second line center to replace Nemestikov? Would he be bouncing up and down the lineup? And what does Jonathan Toews have left at age 37, Connor? Is he able to carry that load? And, if we're going to get to Ehlers in a second, if they do lose Ehlers, is he the direct replacement? I'm not sure if that would be a winning proposition. I think there's certainly room for Jonathan Toews, especially you look at the Stanley Cup Final, Connor. You need that older veteran player like a Perry.
Clearly.
Like a Perry, like a Marchand, a guy who's won a Stanley Cup before, been a top player in the league. I think it would be a huge boost to the team. But what are your expectations for him? And do the Jets, are they going to be counting on him to be their second line center and to be the Ehlers replacement?
Yeah, I don't think you can count on Jonathan Toews, 2-3 years removed from playing NHL hockey to step into a second line role and be a replacement for a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, who's in his prime, just coming off of one of his best seasons as a Jet, his best playoff run as a Jet. Absolutely. So I think expectations should be relatively low for Jonathan Toews coming to Winnipeg. Like, yes, he has that Stanley Cup pedigree, but he hasn't played in a couple of seasons. Can he fill in for Adam Lowry on that 3C role, maybe for the first couple months of the season? That is yet to be determined because, again, we haven't seen Jonathan Toews play hockey, so we don't know what kind of level he can get to. how much was the last season that he played before missing 3 years? How much was he affected by the thing that he had to take 3 years off to manage? So these are all questions that are going to get answered over the next couple of months. But my personal expectations, I'm not counting Jonathan Toews out, but my expectations for him coming in are low. And if the Jets can make a low risk bet on him being the fourth line center and having a good impact in that role, I think that's a win. But my expectations as of right now are pretty low.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the contract is, if he does sign with the Jets, what the expectations are, and the rest of the Jets offseason moves, I think, fully valuing. But I think it'd be a great story to see Jonathan Toews make his comeback here.
For sure.
In his hometown. He's rocking number 19. I'm sure you'd see a lot of Toews. You already do see a lot. So, and hey, you need that veteran presence in the if you want to make a Stanley Cup final, like you're seeing in Edmonton and Florida. Am I right, Connor?
Yes.
Yes. Moving on, the other Winnipeg Jets player who we can't seem to be talking enough about this offseason, Nikolai Ehlers. Chris Johnson was on his podcast. That's the TSN Insider, the Athletic contributor. He does his podcast on the Steve Dangle Podcast Network. Here's what he said about his feeling on Nikolai Ehlers from the CJ show just a couple days ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's likely, for the same reasons I mentioned the other guys, going to hit the market. The Jets had said they wanted to make him a Jet for life, but I think it's a pretty appealing possibility for him to go elsewhere. And there's all sorts of teams, whether it's the Chicagos or Carolinas. I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of teams in the market for offense where I think he could make a lot of sense for. And so. Yeah, I think he's gonna get a raise, and he's gonna have, I think, a fair number of suitors when it really comes time to make that call. But at this point, I haven't heard that he's made 100% the decision to move forward with free agency. But I mean, it feels like that's where it's headed. I think he's gonna want to see what's out there for him on the market, and he's earned his right. I wonder if we're at this spot where we're going to see more and more NHL free agents do this just now with money being pumped back into the system. And, I could see this being a trend where maybe we get a little bit more of a push towards free agency, because obviously, if anything, most NHL players opt to sign long-term where they are for the security and for the comfort of that situation.
There's Chris Johnson from his podcast with the Chris Johnston Show with Julian McKenzie on the Steve Dangle Podcast Network. And that's pretty similar to what Murat said to me on this program last week, that, the closer it gets to July 1, seems more and more like Nikolai Ehlers will hit the open market and he'll hear the offers from other teams. Chris mentioned Chicago and Carolina. Now, Elliot Friedman did report last week that he feels Ehlers wants to go to a contender, which would rule out Chicago. But I think we have to get ready, start bracing ourselves, Connor, for a Winnipeg Jets roster that will likely not have Nikolai Ehlers unless no one comes in and, as Murat said, blows his socks off and he circles back with the Jets and decides to stay here. But seems more and more like, okay, Ehlers in another jersey post July 1.
Yeah, and this report to me, again, Nikolai Ehlers has exercised he's going to exercise his right to hit the open market. That's at least the report. I'm not too shocked by that. That also doesn't rule out him returning to the Winnipeg Jets. You're hearing this a lot with the Mitch Marner negotiations right now too. He's going to hit the open market, but he's not ruling out the Leafs, or at least that's the report that's coming out right now. So I think we're heading to a similar situation with Nikolai Ehlers, where he's going to see what kind of offers are out there, what kind of market he has. That doesn't rule out the Jets. That doesn't rule out him signing with the Winnipeg Jets on July 1st, because he sees some of the other offers and chooses, well, I don't really want to go to Chicago, or I don't want to go to San Jose. I'd rather stay in Winnipeg and try and win a cup. So we'll see what those offers are like for Nikolai Ehlers come July 1. And this is something that I'm not too shocked by, that he's going to test the open market, because he's the kind of guy with the cap rising that a team could really, really overpay for. So he is going to absolutely use his right to go and see the open market. And what a loss that would be for the Winnipeg Jets if Nikolai Ehlers signs with another team like a Carolina, who we've mentioned many times is a team in the East that's trying to get over the hump, needs scoring talent, needs scoring wingers, could offer Nikolai Ehlers a lot of money. So what a loss that would be for the Jets, one that they'd have to replace going into next season, and one that would be very tough to replace, especially with the options on the table right now.
Yeah, second line scoring, power play one, and you saw what the power play looked like with him out. Certainly not as effective. How will they manage to replace his impact as well? So we're on Ehlers watch here. Any morsel from any insider, we will play and debate and discuss. I did put out your contract projection with the help of Evolving Hockey's model on our Instagram over the weekend from your UFA preview, which I encourage everyone to check out. But starting to prepare ourselves, maybe no more Ehlers in Winnipeg. If they had to pick a team that would cause Jets fans the most pain for Ehlers to be in an opposite jersey, you've got I don't know if I asked you this last week. I asked Brandon and Murat. You got a team? Did we discuss this? Anyways, give your answer.
We discussed this on WST Sunday Live as well. Listen, I did. I don't know if me and you did on the show last week, but I think for me, it's Minnesota for a lot of reasons. They're a team that is right on the playoff line, and if they got a Nikolai Ehlers, that would be a huge addition for them. They're in the division. It's the rivalry between the Jets and the Wild, and that rivalry has lost a bit of steam over the past 2 years because the Jets have just won every single game, and there hasn't been as much dirty, rough stuff over the last year or so since the Nikolai Ehlers Ryan Hartman incident. But seeing Nikolai Ehlers and Ryan Hartman play on like the same line would just be ridiculous. So I think the Minnesota Wild are the number one team that I would hate to see Nikolai Ehlers go to in free agency.
Oh, yeah. Ehlers and Ryan Hartman on the same line? That would never happen.
Right.
That would never. I'd like to think Ehlers would not be a fan of that.
Morals.
No matter how, have some morals. Okay, no matter how much money they offer him. Ugh, that makes me want to throw up. I've been riding Vegas. Brandon and I discussed Toronto, and Toronto has 27 retired, so he'd have to change his number. Imagine Nikolai Ehlers with the Maple Leafs scoring a goal at Canada Life Centre next year, with half of the arena dressed in Maple Leafs blue, cheering for him wearing, I don't know what number. What was his rookie number? Like 50 something in his first training camp? I forget what it was.
Well, didn't he just wear 28 at the Worlds for Denmark? I could be wrong on that.
All right. Well,
let me switch it up.
Minnesota
24.
would make 24. Me sick. That would be an all-time heel turn. I would say he would never get booed. I think people will be fans of his for a long time, even for 10 years. But if he suited up next to Ryan Hartman on a line, that is like an NWO style heel turn here. This is that would be serious. Wow, I'm gonna have to bring that up with Hustler. The other Jets topic over the weekend was this leaked photo. Now I don't know. We have to talk about it. I don't really want to. It's funny. I loved Frank Saravalli leaking the Seattle expansion draft. It did great numbers for our show. I didn't particularly enjoy this leak. The NHL awards, they're doing it different this year. It's not a traditional show in auditorium with the host handing out the awards. They're trying to create viral moments by ambushing the winners in a non-traditional setting, like at home with the trophy. We saw Kucherov surprised in locker room. Spencer Carberry, he won the Jack Adams. Scott O'Neill did place second in the voting, but Carberry was surprised with the trophy during an interview. And this was the origin of this one. Was posted Friday on HF boards. I don't know who shared it. It was then deleted and then surfaced on Twitter. Hanger Hockey had it Saturday morning. I'm trying to figure out who it was, but here it is. Connor Hrabchak pictured at what has been photo matched to be his lake house in Michigan based on YouTube videos from the Jets. You got some real internet sleuths out there. But here he is with the Vezina and the Hart trophy. So that's not official. This is a leaked photo. Could be AI. It's very blurry. I don't know if this is a screenshot of a screenshot of a screenshot or what, but this is what is out there. People in our chat are talking. we have to mention this.
Yes, we do. And on WST Sunday Live, my take was I'll want to wait till it's official to talk about how incredible of an accomplishment it would be for Connor Hrabchak to win the Hart, because that's something that I don't really feel like jumping the gun on in terms of, talking about how great it is. And then, Leon Draisaitl actually won and the photo was fake. The NHL awards are going to be revealed Thursday, June 12th. So this Thursday at 5:00 Central Time before Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So on Friday's show this week, we'll maybe be talking about, you and Huss will be talking about Connor Hrabchak, Hart Trophy winner, but I'm going to wait for that to talk about how incredible it would be for a goaltender to win the Hart, let alone a goaltender from the smallest market in the NHL winning the Hart. That is an accomplishment that deserves, confirmation on it being true. It deserves a full show of talking because it's such an incredible accomplishment that I'm not going to jump the gun and have it be fake.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. And, kind of disappointing. It did get, I don't know who took the photo or where. I wish I had more information on that and how something like that got out. But, well, we're just saying, hey, this guy is out there, and we'll wait for confirmation if it is true. Should congratulate Scott Arniel, though. Second place in the Jack Adams, 249 voting points, next to Carberry's 464. Would have liked to see Scott Arniel. He got 16 first place votes. Carberry got 81. Scott Arniel, he did an awesome job in his first year with the Winnipeg Jets, but I think this was a no-brainer here for Carberry, who took a Washington team last year that barely got into the playoffs and for the first place in the East.
Yeah, I think the Jets' success last season worked against Scott Arniel, and the fact that he was on the staff with Rick Bowness. That team had 110 points, this team had 116. So it's an improvement, and they won the President's Trophy, and they won the playoffs don't matter for this award. So you don't look at the playoff success per se, but the Washington Capitals going from an 8 seed that with a negative goal differential all the way to the number 1 seed in the East is definitely a big leap for Spencer Carberry. So congrats to him on winning it. Congrats to Scott Arniel. Incredible year as the head coach. And I was saying this yesterday on the show as well. A lot of what you saw in Game 6 and the way that the Jets rallied around Mark Scheifele on that day, that's reflective of the culture, that's reflective of Adam Lowry, but also Scott Arniel, who in his first year as head coach has done a great job with the culture here in Winnipeg. So well-deserved second place in the Jack Adams for Scott.
There you go. And we're about to bring on Derek Taylor, the Bombers. CFL Week 1 this weekend. How much did you enjoy Canadian football being back on the television?
I enjoyed it. It was a great weekend, Remo. I thought, the games were very interesting, at least in parts. A lot of the games ended in blowouts, like the Hamilton-Calgary game. I know Bo Levi Mitchell with his garbage time yards once again kind of crawled the Hamilton Tiger Cats back into that one. But BC, slow first half. And then Nathan Rourke just absolutely torched the Elks defense in the second half. So Nathan Rourke coming off a strong performance in Week 1, coming to Winnipeg, against a Bombers team that won't have Zach Collaros. But I thought it was great. Loved the new CFL on TSN presentation with the score bug and some of the new graphics. So I really liked the first weekend of CFL action, and I'm really fired up for Bombers football this Thursday.
Yeah, just going back to Week 1, it was, kind of feel like you're not invited to the party by having no Bombers, but Montreal showing their dominance in the East with a win over Toronto, who did have Nick Arbuckle starting. Calgary and Vernon Adams Jr. winning over Hamilton. And BC, got a nice view of them. You have to wonder, Trey Ford, how long is he going to be the starter for Edmonton? They've got a real tough schedule here to start the year with BC, the Bombers, and Montreal. Cody Fajardo, Grey Cup winning quarterback, in as the backup. I don't know. They couldn't really move the ball at times. Threw up a hospital ball to one of his receivers, got his head. Well, it was actually hit to the chest, but his helmet flew off. So, well, I think a lot of good teams in the CFL, more so in a bit tighter mix than last year. But Connor, well, great having you on to start the show. Looking forward to connecting towards the end when we go over the Coolbet lines.
Yeah, looking forward to this conversation with Derek that you've got coming up here, and Murat and Tyler. So it's a great lineup of guests. I'll be watching, and I'll see you back at the end of the show.
Perfect. There he is, Connor Hrabchak. Follow him on X, Connor Hrabchak 1. And Check out his UFA RFA preview on our channel and yesterday's WST Sunday Live on YouTube and our podcast feed if you want more content. But coming up, the Bombers, they're preparing for week 1, Thursday night, Princess Auto Stadium against BC. But we'll get to Derek Taylor, but first, here's Huss.
Do got to shout out Rolly's transfer, folks. If you got a move coming up this year, holler at our friends at Rolly's, family owned and operated for over 60 years in Winnipeg and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. And you might just be lucky enough to get your stuff moved in the Winnipeg Sports Talk truck, which you can see running all over the streets of Winnipeg. If you do have a move, head on over to their website at rollys.com. Click on Request an Estimate. Put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. And then let them know when and where you're planning on moving and what needs to go. And our friends at Rolly's will turn it around quickly with a great quote and get you locked in for the white glove service that they are famous for. For your next move, make it Rolly's, the most trusted name in Manitoba and moving. Find out more, request an estimate today over at rollys.com. Great seeing Dr. Terry on the weekend out at the soccer game and the Match Play Championship. Of course, St. Patel Dental Center, proud sponsor of Winnipeg Sports Talk, serving generations of Winnipeggers in Manitoba out in the old St. Patel area. But it's worth the drive wherever you are in the city because they've got a beautiful new facility, state-of-the-art equipment with free parking right behind the building. It couldn't be any more convenient. And a full array of dental services for patients from 6 months to 99 plus. Everything from checkups and cleanings all the way to things like dental implants. For more information on all of their services and to make an appointment, hit them up online at stpateldental.ca. We got a nice weekend, a nice few days coming up. We're going to talk to Andrew Collier later on about the upcoming Gold Eyes homestand. Also a great time to maybe try a couple great new summer drinks, including the Canadian Club Pack, which is not just the famous Canadian Club and ginger ale. They've also added a citrus smash, which is amazing, and the half and half, which I think is going to be our go-to on the golf course this year. Arnold Palmer, half iced tea, lemonade, with the great taste of Canada's iconic Canadian whiskey. Canadian Club, pick it up today at your local Manitoba liquor marts when you pop by. And just before we bring in Dave, big weekends coming up. Boating, camping, jet skis. Got to make sure you got batteries for all these things, folks. And this is an important time to remind you all that you can shop local and save a lot of money by driving past the big box stores over to Manitoba Battery. 2 locations in Winnipeg to serve you, Logan Avenue and Dovercourt Drive in the south end of the city. And there you'll find the biggest and best selection of batteries for literally everything at the best prices in town. You'll save up to $50 a battery for your campers and boats by dealing with Manitoba Battery. And hey, if you're busy and you can't make it down, no sweat. Go online to manitobabattery.com or give them a call. They'll deliver you your batteries for free anywhere in the city with any purchase over $60. It is just that easy. For all your battery needs, keep it local, get the best price in town with Manitoba Battery, 2 locations, and manitobabattery.com.
There's Huss. Back tomorrow. Can't wait to hear all about his trip. But we're coming up, Derek Taylor. This segment brought to you by Ben Moss. Ben Moss is proudly Canadian-owned and operated with history dating back more than 100 years. 3 locations in Winnipeg, Polo Park Shopping Center, St. Vital Center, and Kildonan Place. Committed to customer satisfaction. Check out a large selection of Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and mined diamonds available with payment plans to suit your need. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, because love is timeless. All right, Bombers, Thursday, Princess Auto Stadium. So pumped to be joined right now by play-by-play voice on CJOB, Derek Taylor. Derek, how's it going here on week 2 ahead of the Bombers' first game? It's got to feel great getting ready to call some real football here.
Yeah, it'll be great. Once we figure out the week 2, game 1, how we balance that out, it feels like week 1 on our pregame show. People are going to talk about week 1, but week 1's the one that just happened. It's going to be a whole thing, Remis. I don't know how we're going to get through it.
We'll figure it out, I'm sure. But yes, it is CFL week 2, Bombers game 1, home opener Thursday. But what did you think of the other games around the league that took place here as we've now completed week 1.
Yeah, I was super impressed with Saskatchewan. You lose your best defensive player, your best receiver, and a third player. Who was the third one? Oh, your running back, AJ Ouellette, with what looked like a head injury. It's so bad they had to go to the market to sign Kadeem Carey. They lost those 3 guys early in that game and still held off the Ottawa Redblacks. Super impressed with Saskatchewan. Super impressed with Mike Rose, their free agent addition on that defensive line. It looks vicious. So they looked like I thought they would look this season. We'll see how much it holds up, how long Trevor Harris holds up. But I was super impressed with Sask in week 1. I haven't seen Calgary-Hamilton yet, but it felt like a Hamilton 2024 game where, hey, we're down a bunch and we're going to put up some yards and points at the end, right? That felt like them last year. And yeah, Vernon, no touchdowns, passing, 2 interceptions, but 3 for Dedrick Mills is a good bunch for them. Toronto, Montreal, ordinary numbers from Davis Alexander. I'm curious to dig into a little more. Just over 200 yards passing, but it's not real Toronto, right? It's Nick Arbuckle, Toronto, not Chad Kelly, Toronto. And then BC Edmonton had so many talking points of, I might have been a little low on the BC Lions is kind of the big one I took away. And I might have been right on Trey Ford. So yeah, it was a fun week 1. And I don't know that we learned too much, but I was excited to see some of it, and some of it, at least I'll use for my own confirmation bias.
Yeah, it's fun to see some football finally back. The Bombers had to wait. I will say this about Hamilton, for everyone who had Bo Levi Mitchell on MOP or number 1 on their top 50 players, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly like last year. I think he had 180 yards. They're down 2 touchdowns, ends up with just over 300 in a losing effort. It was exactly like last year. So we'll see what we learn. But for the Bombers, they had a week 1 off. It was a bye week, but they still practiced. How did they handle, the weird start to the season for them?
Yeah, so Mike O'Shea pointed out to us, hey, in the first 2 weeks and the last 2 weeks, you're only obliged to give guys 3 days off. So they gave them 3 days off and then practiced Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And it was unusual in one way in that Zach Collaros was the number 1 quarterback during those 3 days. You think, well, yes, but Chris Strevler is going to have to start on Thursday. So that was an interesting wrinkle. And then they work on a bunch of stuff that they may not have time to during the regular season, right? They work on this special situation and that special situation. You go, okay, well, it seems like a pretty good use of your time. Got some rest for guys like Brady Oliveira. Retta Cramdy, defensive back, had a chance to, a couple extra days to recover from a little nick he took on the second last day of camp. So they try to use that time effectively, but it is a weird time, right? Because everybody's waiting to play. Let's go smash. Oh, we have to. Right, there's no game because it's an odd-numbered team league. So it's you do the best we can, and great to see them get the weekend off and then come back Monday and get back at it.
Yeah, some news about today's practice. QB coach Jarius Jackson making his first appearance this season. What can you tell us about his absence and return?
Yeah, all Mike O'Shea would say, and it's a typical Mike O'Shea line, is that it was an excused absence, and he'll be here when he's here. And today is the day. Jackson, of course, longtime assistant coach, longtime quarterback coach. Last year, the interim head coach of the Edmonton Elks. It seemed like a really smart hire from the Bombers, right? If you're going to go with a first-time offensive coordinator in Jason Hogan, hey, support coaches on the offense like a Jarius Jackson seemed like they would be incredibly valuable. So when he wasn't here for all of training camp, in both preseason games and things like that, we wondered, okay, well, I hope it's not serious. Like, I hope it's not serious in the way that we all understand what I mean. And you hope it's just a thing that's happening. But Jarius is a guy who you think would be very, very valuable to a literally first-time offensive coordinator at this level. So now that he's here, he's got his clipboard and he's talking to I saw him, coaching up Jarrett Stearns a little bit about, hey, you should do this and we'll think about doing this and stuff like that. And you go, okay, yeah, that's the veteran of more than a decade of being a coach and a player. Then in addition to that, that they were going for. So we're excited to talk to Jarius after practice today. Just find out, where he's at, where his head's at, what he's been up to, and what he hopes to add to, the biggest question about these Bombers is, okay, well, what is Jason Hogan going to be at offensive coordinator? And hopefully, Jarius can help Hogan find a real good answer to that.
Yeah, okay, you've answered the biggest question for the Bombers heading into the season. There it is right there. We'll get into some more outlook, but I want to ask injuries. Any notable injuries seemed last week? A couple guys rotating in and out, Oliveira, Stanley Bryant, Hrabchak, Kramdy, but they seem to be pretty healthy here heading into week one.
Yeah, it's really good. Starting receiving core, all healthy, starting offensive line. Eric Lofton has been out for much of camp and then all of the preseason. I wonder if his job's been taken now by Kendall Randolph, if Randolph is going to be that right tackle for almost certainly for Thursday, and then we'll see after that. But Lofton's a guy with more experience. Randolph is a little younger. I'm curious to see if when Eric Lofton is healthy, if he does get that job back. What else? Defensive backs all healthy. Linebackers look good. Kyrie Wilson is healthy, is the guy we're always worrying about. And then on the front, we're waiting to see how it plays out, right? How much does Jordan Younger want to use, his 3-man fronts and his 4-man fronts? And he loves, here's 4 defensive tackles, here's 3 defensive ends, let's go, and throw it at it. So with Cam Lawson back in there, we're curious to see how it's all going to play out. But we know it'll be Willie and James Vaughters on the ends, and then we'll see what happens in the middle. But yeah, for a team that was so banged up last year, I keep throwing out the stat, 22% of their starter man games were lost to injury last season. Very curious to see and excited to see that there are not a lot of long-term, injuries to super important players at this moment.
Yeah, we saw you mentioned Saskatchewan have some big injuries there. I mean, right off the bat, crazy. Yes, that's football. Injuries certainly going to happen. The Bombers in a good spot heading here into week one. And I wanted to ask you about, the offseason. Some big losses. Ontario Wilson going to the NFL. Kenny Lawler, we saw him with Hamilton. Joel Tarski, Hamilton. I mean, who from the Bombers isn't on Hamilton? But Tyrell Ford, Big Hill, Liam Dobson, all gone. How have they managed to replace all those guys heading into this year? And anything in particular stand out to you about some of the new faces on the roster?
Yeah, the one big standout is when they signed Dylan Mitchell, the receiver from Edmonton, in the offseason, I thought, okay, well, that's a great addition. This receiving core is going to boom. And then they lost Kenny Lawler to Hamilton as one of the 9 guys. I thought, okay, well, at least Mitchell can, take some of that weight off. Well, Mitchell hasn't been a first-team receiver since day one of camp. If he gets onto the roster on Thursday, he's probably doing so as the punt returner. And you go, okay, well, that's not working out exactly as they would have hoped. Carrick Wheatfall has looked great in that X-wide receiver spot, but you probably hoped it would be Dylan Mitchell in there. So it'll be Wheatfall and Jarrett Stearns in addition to Dembski, Clercius, and Dalton Schoen. Okay, well, we need to see what Dylan Mitchell is going to add to this team, because a guy that Justin Dunk reported got a substantial signing bonus and is on a good salary. He would be the 3rd highest paid receiver on this team, just behind Dalton Schoen. Okay, well, that's going to need to be something substantial. James Vaughters opposite Willie Jefferson. I love that one so much. I think he's an impact player. 5 sacks in each of the last 3 seasons. Playing opposite Willie, if you want to rush 3, okay, well, now here's a guy who can get to the quarterback as well. And, add in 10 more sacks this season, collectively, just by having a guy who's that big a force. That's an exciting one. It allays the loss of guys like Taiwan Garba to Hamilton and Celestin Haba to Toronto, and Miles Fox on the interior to Hamilton as well. Like I mentioned, 9 guys gone to the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So yeah, they did do a good job, I think, of replacing those and even adding in a guy like Peyton Logan to hopefully fix up what was not a great return game last season.
Yeah, they showed that graphic during the Hamilton game on the weekend about all the Bombers going to Hamilton. Crazy. And you mentioned return game, big concern all year last year, never really replaced Janarian Grant. Do we still have those same concerns? Is Peyton Logan the guy, Dylan Mitchell the guy, or is it still a big question mark heading into this year?
My guess would be that Peyton Logan is the guy. Thing is, he's on the 1-game injured list. Got injured very early in camp. We haven't seen him do any running during practice, right? There'll be guys on the injured list who are doing some work with the trainers. I haven't seen anything from Peyton Logan so far. So you hope it's a 1-game injury and he's back for the 2nd game against BC. But I just don't know what the answer to that is. When he's back, to me, he's the returner. He's the punt returner. He's the kickoff returner. He just handles that and then maybe gives Brady a couple reps off a game at running back. But in the meantime, they're going to have to fill that in with be it Dylan Mitchell, be it Trey Vavel, the rookie defensive back, Cody Case, the second-year receiver. Maybe they go there. But yeah, I think it's Logan's job once he is ready to go, because again, they paid him a healthy salary and he's done it at this level for quite some time and he's been good at it. So it would be a big step up from them, at least in the assuredness that we have a guy that can handle this.
Yeah, I thought Logan was always solid in Calgary. Looking forward to seeing him with the Bombers. Now, the Bombers, 5 straight Grey Cup appearances. You know, they lost the last 3, but big year for them with the Grey Cup being here. How would you compare this year's team to last year's team, which got off to a slow start, but eventually won the West and made it to the championship game?
Yeah, I think there's 2 ways I kind of approach this. One, just on a 1 to 45 man talent level, I think they're better than last year. So that's not a ton better. Like they're, losing Kenny Lawler hurts, but then Lawler missed 8 games last year with a broken wrist, 6 the year before. What do you do with that? I think they're a fraction more talented than last year. The big one for me, Remis, is they cannot be as injured as they were last season. Like I mentioned, almost a quarter of their starter man games to injury was triple what it was the year before. And you go, okay, well, maybe the year before was an outlier and there were too few injuries for an average, but last year was way too many. So if they are less injured than they were last year, that is a massive improvement, right? If Dalton Schoen doesn't miss 15 games, that is enormous for this team. If Patty Neufeld doesn't miss a couple games, if Stanley Bryant doesn't miss a couple games, I think Patty missed 5 last year. That every one of those is another tick in the column and another way that you squeak out those close games against Toronto or whatever close loss you might have had along the way. Guys like that can make all the difference. And all of a sudden, a 2-6 start is a 4-4 start or anything like that. And an 11-win season is a 13-win season, whatever it adds up to be. But I think they're better positioned this year. However, the West, Saskatchewan is a little better positioned than last year. And BC, based on what we saw in week 1, they might be better positioned than last year as well. So no guarantees of anything. But for me, the Bombers are going to be better this year than they were in 2024.
Yeah, I thought the last couple of years the Bombers were up here, and then there was a gap, and then the rest. But now with Nathan Rourke back in BC, Saskatchewan, they were strong last year. Can they, keep it up for the whole year instead of falling off in the second half? Edmonton, well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Edmonton there. They've got a really tough schedule to start the season, and that was a tough one on Saturday. So you're looking at the Bombers squad. What would be their biggest strength heading into this year's passing, running? I guess it would have to be running the ball with the number 1 player on TSN's top 50 players list.
Yeah, that'll be the running the ball thing. We'll see how much Jason Hogan likes to do that versus Buck Pierce. And then it depends on how good are Kendall Randolph and Micah Vanderpool, the 2 new offensive linemen, in the run game. That so much of it comes from how much the OC wants to do it and how good the team around him is at doing it, right? So Brady's going to be Brady. He's going to take 90% of the snaps, so that'll be good. The passing game, just having Dalton Schoen back is such a massive boost to this team. Garrick Wheatfall keeps saying how much improved he is physically over last season, and 2 touchdowns in that second preseason game would seem to help that. Dembski healthy. Year 2 for Clarcius is a big body. Stearns is a change-up weapon. Reggie White is around. Dylan Mitchell has more receiving yards at Princess Auto Stadium than any other stadium in the CFL, as far as road stadiums. You go, maybe that's pretty good too. I think the passing game is going to be a real strength for them. This was the number 1 defense in the league last year, though. So it hasn't gotten a ton worse. It's gotten different, right? Big Hill to Tony Jones. Brandon Alexander becomes Jamal Parker. Tyrell Ford's a big loss, but Marquise Bridges is a guy who has, this is his second year with the Bombers. So that's a big loss, but it's nice to have a guy who's got some experience here. Okay, the defense might not be runaway number 1. Maybe it's number 1. Maybe it's number 2 again. But yeah, I kind of glossed over the defense at the beginning because it's been so good for so long. We expect the sun to rise, so we don't need to talk about it. I feel like that's how the Bombers defense has been. We don't need to talk about it because we're guaranteed it's going to be really good.
You're getting me fired up for the season right now. I'm remembering, when they had that rough stretch, the injuries that they had, Lawler and Schoen out. I remember Collaros really struggled. having shown healthy for an entire, hopefully the entire year would be a bonus. We'll see what the new receivers, that Jareth Stern's solid in Saskatchewan. Can he bring that here? And seems like we're ready for a Carrick Wheatfall breakout season based on training camp reports. So week 1, Chris Streveler at quarterback. You have any indication on what kind of game plan we're seeing? They went so run heavy last year with Buck Pierce as OC. You expect the same with Jason Hogan and Streveler under center against BC on Thursday?
That one's going to be interesting for me because it will depend a lot on what do they believe about their team on second and long situations. If you run the ball, you're going to get trapped in 2nd and 7, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10 sometimes. So 2023, the Bombers were incredible at that. 2024, as we all saw, they were not, right? And so it makes it that much harder on them to be a good functioning offense. So yeah, I guess it'll kind of depend on what does Hogan believe about their ability to convert? Because sometimes Brady can rip off one for 15, but what happens when it's, the defense does a great job and sticks them for a 1-yard gain? Do they believe they can get out of that hole? They dig themselves. So yeah, if that's there, then I think it's going to be great. My inclination is there's going to be more passing, and it seems weird with the running back coach who Brady praised so heavily taking over as OC, but my inclination is we're going to see more early down passes from this team in the first 3 quarters, just because I think maybe that's what Zach might be more comfortable with. But we're at the point where we literally have no idea what Jason Hogan is all about. We saw some stuff in the preseason, his love of jet sweeps and stuff like that. But what does he truly believe? We're going to start to get a sense of that on Thursday.
Yeah, just looking back at Streveler's start in the win against Ottawa last year, threw 13 of 21, 127 yards, no touchdowns, but 13 rushes for 79 yards and a touchdown. We'll see how this plays out on Thursday. It's a BC team. Looked pretty good on Saturday. You wonder if Nathan Rourke is back to 2022 levels rather than the Nathan Rourke we saw last year coming back from the NFL.
Terrifying thought, right? That 2022, the 2022 was such an outlier. Like I would do a stat and it's completion percentage over expected. And it's, hey, when a guy throws the ball here on the field, how often does he expect to complete it? He was so far over that you go, either he's the greatest quarterback we've ever seen, save for Doug Flutie in this league, or this was a lot of running hot. And I feel like we've seen it's a lot of running hot, but I'm just going to go on a limb and say in his last 18 games, he's probably thrown for 5,100 yards, just pulling out a number. Like even Rourke not doing real well is still very good. And I think we saw in that game against Edmonton, a team that I look at and go, this team has a real nice front six, and Rourke was able to navigate all that. They got some guys who can cover as well. I feel like Rourke might be really good. And if Stanley Berryhill can catch all those passes, being the 4th guy in that receiving core, it's going to be a test. I'm very curious to see it. But Rourke of 22 is probably gone forever, but he might be in the if you split 24 and 22 and right in the middle, he might be above the middle of that. It might be closer to that 22 performance than what we saw in his first game back. On a couple days practice, he gets absolutely shell-shocked by the Bombers, right? That's kind of the last memory we have of him.
Yeah, a bit of a short week for BC. Played Saturday. They are here Thursday, so I'm looking forward to seeing both sides of the ball, what that game will look like. But I looked at your preseason predictions, DT. You still have, after having said all these, still have the Bombers winning the West. Do you have them going all the way? And why did you think so? And who did you have in the East as well?
Yeah, so I had Winnipeg and Saskatchewan being just right there in the West, to the point where I think that Week 20 matchup settles this if both teams are equivalently healthy, right? If either team loses their quarterback, all bets are off. But I had those two, and then a pretty big gap to now. I wish I put BC in 3rd, and I hope I did, but I think I put Edmonton in 3rd, having seen that with Calgary in 5th. And okay, yeah, I still think Winnipeg is the class. I love what Saskatchewan did in free agency, adding to what they'd done last year when they hosted the West semifinal. They've already had 5 big injuries, so that's going to be a problem for Sask going forward potentially. In the East, I made a lot. I'd been hyping up Hamilton all offseason because I love what they did. And I was swayed a little bit by what they did late season last year. But Montreal was my pick to win the East. Even with the change at quarterback, they show enough confidence in Davis Alexander. And if he's just good enough, the receiving core is good. The defense looks really good, especially when Mustafa Johnson comes back off 6 game. I hope that happens for them. Montreal, I mean, if they don't have a bunch of weird turnovers, they'd have been in the Grey Cup last year in that East Finals. So I think Montreal is the tops in the East, and they gave it pretty good to Toronto on the weekend.
Yeah, well, CFL is here, super pumped, and I'm super pumped to hear you back on CJOB with Doug Brown. So you got some new additions to the broadcast as well. Paul LaPolice joining to fill everyone in on how they can hear you guys on Thursday, and well, I guess the coaches show as well.
Yeah, coaches show is every Monday, 7 to 8 tonight. So it's the first one of the regular season. So people will be bumping with questions about Buck Pierce coming back and Chris Strubber starting at quarterback. So 7 to 8 on 680 CJOB. Thursday broadcast, the kickoff is at 7:30, so our pregame show starts at 5:30. If you're coming to the game, we are live from the tailgate party zone, so you can come by. You can get Doug Brown to give you a high five and sign some stuff. It would be great. We love having people pop by the booth. But yeah, 2 hours of pregame coverage, as you mentioned. Paul LaPolice joining us this season to give us some analysis. Doug Brown and Ed Tate and our entire cast of characters. It's the biggest CFL broadcast in the country as far as the personnel that we deploy for it. So I'm super happy about it. Super happy that everybody's back, and very happy that the Bombers look like they're going to win a bunch of football games, and we can all get jacked about potentially hosting a West Final and then the Grey Cup right here at Winnipeg.
Awesome, Derek. I'll say I was down when they lost the Grey Cup, but you've brought me back up full of optimism for 2025. I'm more excited than I was before. So thanks so much for taking the time to join me today, and looking forward to hearing your call on Thursday.
Thank you.
Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Winnipeg Sports Talk, and so much else in our sporting community and city. Of course, Princess Auto has 3 locations in Winnipeg and Manitoba, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and Brandon, where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. You can always find out more online and shop 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com as well. You know, I'm getting ready to get out to Aikens in a month or so. And listen, I've already seen people out on the river fishing this year. Fishing season is finally here. We got some gorgeous weather. But if you're thinking about maybe taking that fishing experience to the next level, get over to aikenslake.com and find out more about availability and options for the 2025 fishing season at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. World-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from the Aikens team and the Turan family. And you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, including a short flight. Again, aikenslake.com for more information on the 2025 season. And I encourage you to check out all their social media feeds at Aikens Lake for more on what the Aikens experience is all about. Of course, we are getting into that time, folks, where it's wedding season. A lot of busy weekends coming up for many of you. If this coincides with you needing to up your menswear game, head on over to our friends at F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. Just celebrated 15 years in business here in the Peg, featuring the best in men's clothing with custom suits starting at just over $400. Chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. And of course, speaking of weddings, if you are just getting engaged or planning a wedding, make sure to talk to the guys at F about a special discount for the wedding party when the guys get their suits for the big day over at F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more or make an appointment to come in for a fitting online at F. That's EPHapparel.com.
There's us. He'll be back tomorrow with so much to talk about with the RBC Canadian Open, where was he at? Soccer game, Canada, Blue Jays. What a weekend for us. Can't wait to hear about it. But thanks to Derek Taylor for taking the time to join me. Bomber season Thursday. I will be in the building, Princess Auto Stadium, against the BC Lions. But so pumped for our next guest, Murat of The Athletic. But this segment brought to you by your Prairie Toyota dealers. They want to remind you to get in and go with the Toyota Tundra. Quality. That means it has the strength to take on any challenge, off-road, or hauling a heavy load, backed by the peace of mind, knowing it's a Toyota. Take the road less traveled. Room for travel and comfort. Room for teammates, friends, and gear. Leads from 154 weekly for 60 months at 5.39% APR with $71.99 down. Hybrid options available. Visit shop.toyota.ca. So pumped to be joined by Murat of The Athletic as I bring him in right now. Murat, so great having you on. How's it going? How are you enjoying the Stanley Cup Final?
I was just saying to somebody that I thought that the media collectively was maybe a little fast to decide that this was Edmonton's year. I've been loving the hockey. It's been great drama, overtime, last second goals, all that sort of stuff. And I honestly think that, after game one, I thought people were tripping over themselves to anoint Connor McDavid Stanley Cup champion. They're just getting a little bit excited about that storyline. I think Florida is still loaded to the brim with players who will, just as likely to elbow you in the face as to put on a high-speed, high-skill game and defeat you that way. So I think the Oilers are in tough heading down to Florida tonight.
Yeah, hey, I was here anointing Connor McDavid Stanley Cup champion. They almost had a 2-0 lead if not for Brad Marchand scoring in overtime. But Florida, they lost in overtime in game one, so they could easily have a 2-0 lead as well. It has been that tight. 1-1 seems fitting, but how about Nate Schmidt off to the start he's having here in the Cup Final? And does it change anything the way his tenure ended in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I saw an article from Mike Russo today, just how Nate Schmidt started having fun again. And I'm like, I don't know. From talking to Nate Schmidt over the years, I feel like he was always having fun, almost no matter what room he was in. But it's clear something in Florida's worked for him really spectacularly. I remember when he was bought out and you understood it just based on the size of a nearly $6 million contract. Winnipeg needed that. They weren't getting $6 million of value from Nate Schmidt, nor do I think that the Florida Panthers are getting $6 million of value from Nate Schmidt. At the same time, I think, and this is what I said to somebody in Florida who sort of asked me what to expect, I still saw an NHL player there. His brain still processes the game at high speed. If he had the wheels of a top four defenseman, he would still be a top four defenseman. He reads forechecking pressure really well. He can move the puck well. When he's in the offensive zone, he can distribute well because he's making his reads at a high speed. I think the thing that sort of got away from him in Winnipeg, and that I didn't know if would come back for him or not, was his foot speed. He looked slow. He didn't look like he was able to get into those situations where he would usually do his damage with those other abilities. And, back-to-back years, I think he was hurt in various ways kind of coming out of training camp as well. And I think he played through some things. I remember, seeing him in the dressing room and he'd have various braces on his knees and ankles and things like that because he knew he was on the precipice of losing an NHL job. And I think he played through some things that slowed him down that he might otherwise not have.
Yeah, I read that from Michael Russo in The Athletic. He noted he scored one postseason goal with 4 different franchises, Washington, Vegas, Winnipeg, and Florida, the only active defenseman to achieve that feat. Wow. And he joined Mike Green, Yanni Laukkonen, and Sergei Gonchar as one of 4 NHL defensemen in the last 30 years who score multiple goals in a playoff debut with a franchise. Really digging in there from Michael Russo. We did have some Jets news and rumors over the weekend. Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects, noting that the Winnipeg Jets are the favorite to land Jonathan Toews. Have you heard anything on that? And where do you see Toews fitting in if he were to be signed by the Jets on their roster?
Yeah, have believed Winnipeg to be a strong option basically since Kevin Cheveldayoff told it was Mike and I in Denver sitting down with him. And we had a great sit down with him in January, kind of heading into the trade deadline, where Cheveldayoff said, hey, look, he's a free agent. We can talk about him a little bit. And he talked about the relationship he has with Jonathan Toews. He talks about what a storybook ending it would be. Not that Toews needs a storybook ending, given the cups that he's won. It also occurs to me, too, that Toews is just a big contributor to Winnipeg in a lot of ways. I think he made a sizable donation to the Dakota Community Center. There are a lot of things that go hand in hand, I think, with probably Winnipeg on the ice and True North off the ice, thinking like, geez, this is a guy we can bank on in a lot of ways in the community and all that sort of stuff. In terms of what to expect from him on the ice, I've been hedging my bets. I'm basically, I think I wrote to this effect in today's piece saying, maybe expect a bottom six center until performance dictates otherwise. The guy's 37 years old. He hasn't played since April of 2023 in the NHL. Whatever level he's been able to get to at various points in his career, he was already kind of fading a bit in his last couple of years in Chicago on that really overmatched Chicago Blackhawks team. So could be a good fit, could have the veteran leadership, has the cup pedigree, all that sort of stuff, has the relationships from Chicago. And I know for some people that's not a strength, but I think for the majority of the hockey world it is. Just temper your expectations. Maybe this is a third line center. If all goes really well, maybe it's a viable second line center as well. But most of all for me, if the player is interested, if the team is interested, it's a dart worth throwing for the Winnipeg Jets because he can probably help you from the fourth line, even if that's where he ultimately lands.
Yeah, you mentioned Jonathan Toews in the community, and back in 2016 gave $1 million to the Dakota Community Center, now known as, I believe, the Jonathan Toews Community Center. So, yeah, it would be very cool to see him in a Jets jersey, what it would do to have him as an alumni if he decides to stay in Winnipeg post-career as well. Number of off-ice reasons. We'll see what it means for on-ice for a guy who hasn't played in a couple seasons. I did watch the Gabe Landeskog documentary of his return, actually, and that guy, a bit younger, but hadn't played for a couple seasons and really put in the work. And you have to think if Jonathan Toews is coming back after a couple years off and opted not to sign around the trade deadline, I'm sure he's working very hard to come back as the best version possible of himself. You mentioned your piece in The Athletic, 2 mailbags over the weekend, and you and I touched on Ehlers last week. I don't really know if we have anything more to add, but we'll have to bring it up. We're kind of just waiting here till July 1. I know Chris Johnson noted in his podcast that he expects him to go to free agency. You said that as well. I put out the clip today. I don't know what more we can say at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what to add to it either. The only sort of route that I currently see that returns him to Winnipeg is if he hits the market and finds that, oh my goodness, the grass was not nearly as green as I thought it could be. But it just doesn't make sense to me that you would go 10 years and then with 3 weeks remaining in the opportunity to find out what the league thinks of you, that you would just, turn your back on that and not explore it to the fullest at this stage. And again, like I said in that clip, to their credit, their camp has not said anything definitive, which leaves the door open for every possibility, including a return. I'm just fully not expecting one at this stage.
Yeah, we'll wait and see what happens July 1. That would probably be the path if you see the offers and say, you know what, I'm happy in Winnipeg, and we'll see how that goes. One position you touched on that we didn't talk about last week was defense, and I'm looking at the Jets roster right now, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 defensemen currently under contract for next season. Dylan Sandberg's an RFA. That's 8. Hayden Fleury's a UFA. We'll see what happens there. And Elias Salamonson is a prospect who could push up. But you note that you'd like to see the Jets get a bit beefier and more skilled on the back end. How do you see a path here with all these contracts currently signed?
Yeah, it's a real tough approach. And I think if you just read the room with respect to how many contracts have been given out to veteran defensemen in Winnipeg, you've got fresh extensions for Dylan DeMello, for Neil Pionk. Josh Morrissey still has term. Dylan Samberg, they're going to aim for a long-term deal there. And I believe Dylan Samberg is pretty happy with that idea as well. So you can really lock in a pretty substantial portion. I mean, that's the top four as Winnipeg knows it. And like 7 defensemen already under contract, 8 the moment Samberg signs. At the same time, I think everybody notes this would be a much more dynamic blue line if you could find that unicorn large defenseman with the puck skill, with the ability to play, top pairing or second pairing minutes from maybe a more violent perspective, to be honest. Clear that crease a little bit better, shut down plays on the walls a little bit better, and ultimately open up Connor Hrabchak's sightlines such that if this is a weakness for him, if playoff hockey in that way is something he's going to struggle with forever, well, you're not really doing him the most favors possible when, whether it's Dylan DeMello, whether it was even Shen and Stanley on that third pair. There's a lot of players who are in positions or have attributes you hope would clear the crease, and they're not really. Winnipeg wasn't having success at that. So admitting it's a tough look, admitting that this is highly unlikely. I was looking at Vladislav Gavrikov, a pending unrestricted free agent from Los Angeles, who I think they'll be interested in. I've heard rumors about the Rangers being interested in him. We also talked about Keandre Miller, who is a phenomenal young defenseman, although he's on the precipice of unrestricted free agency in a couple of years from now. So I don't think the Rangers are ready to bet big on him. With the Jets in some capacity, I'm not sure. It's a hard one to solve. I think 2C, there's lots of opening, lots of minutes available. Winnipeg would have to take a big swing and demote somebody to add a defenseman right now, and that seems like the trickier or stickier wicket.
Yeah, we're looking for upgrades. You've been talking about the second line center for a while now, upgrade there and an upgrade on defense. You do wonder if they look to move on from one of these players on defense. Ville Heinola has got to play 27 games or become a free agent. At this point, to say, it didn't work out and look to move on from him?
I think that maybe just where this goes in the end, and maybe everybody's happy with that in the end. I've seen some people suggest, okay, just offload Ville Heinola this summer. And to that, I say there's really no point. There's really no point. He's been a good soldier throughout all of this. If he's ready to burn bridges, I don't see him being ready to burn bridges. So why get rid of depth that you could just take to camp? We've seen how many defensemen have been injured at various training camps in the past, whether it was Samberg, whether it was Heinola, Nate Schmidt, all that sort of stuff. Just keep the body there. And if for some reason the C's part and he plays 27 games, which he's never done, and he becomes a restricted free agent instead of a UFA next summer, great. You can have that conversation then. But more than likely, he's a depth defenseman again, doesn't get enough playing time again. And then the Jets, who clearly don't value him enough to play him, say go free. He goes and explores his options, and then he gets to find out if he was right and he was an NHL player all along, or if maybe the grass again isn't greener. And I think that's a decision you don't even have to try to make until next summer.
Yeah, I guess we'll have our eye on the bottom of the defense depth chart there. And one player we've had around, a Jets drafted player, Dmitry Rashevsky, a Russian. We've kind of been loosely watching him. Just reported signed a KHL deal for 3 years. Can we put to rest the idea that this player will be coming to Winnipeg?
Almost all of the way out. I saw a report. I forget the reporter's last name, but I believe he's Dylan. His first name is Dylan, and he writes for Elite Prospects.
Yes, Dylan Griffin.
So what he did was he read the Sport Express, which is a Russian newspaper. He made sense of that today. And so there's a little bit of an update in that it looks as though Moscow, which is his current team, will probably match the offer sheet he signed. And if they do, they'll probably try to trade him. And if they do that, there's some mechanism apparently by which he can block that. I don't know any of this. I'm just filtering it through my reading of what Dylan said on Twitter. There seems to be some type of out wherein he might end up free to sign a contract in North America. But if he signed that offer sheet at all, a 3-year deal, clearly the NHL isn't on his front burner. This would be a weird way to choose the NHL, even if the option is still open. And probably even if Winnipeg is saying, hey, look, we might need you to play in the AHL as well. That might not have any appeal at all for a 24-year-old who's put up some pretty solid counting stats in Russia so far.
Yeah, we've had some people asking us about Hrabchak. Why don't you talk about him more? But it's never really felt like this was a real possibility that he was going to jump over. But he's still a Jets property. I don't forget to use the word property, but a Jets drafted player that they have the rights to, and we'll have to wait and see what happens there. As far as prospects go, just looking ahead to next year, which prospects do you think likely have the best shot to make an impact at the NHL level?
Yeah, I think you've got to look up front, and that's dismaying. Like, for me, Winnipeg's top prospect, the one who, if he gets a job, has the best future and maybe even the best early impact, probably Elias Salomonsson. But like we just talked about defenseman-wise, there's not a route. There is no route. Like, okay, they waive Ville Heinola, so they're down to 7. And then somebody gets hurt, and now they're 6. Okay, now Elias Salomonsson makes the team. But it's never been Winnipeg's approach to promote a guy while he's got multiple years of ELC left. I think he has 2 now. No waivers required to send him to the Moose. Probably the plan is to let him, quote-unquote, over-ripen like Dylan Samberg did before him. He's probably even a step ahead of Samberg, definitely, versus like he's doing things in the AHL at a younger age than Samberg did. So there's lots to be excited about. Even then, it's tough to see them promoting him unless they're forced to, unless he's so spectacular or somebody gets hurt. So I'm thinking, how many Jets forwards are under contract right now? And I think it's 10. So there's jobs open up front. And you really hope, after the years he's put in the AHL, even though he didn't score a ton last year, you really hope this is something Brad Lambert can seize. You really hope Nikita Chibrikov is back at full health and can seize that as well. He's got a little more two-way edge to him. And those are the ones that I'm thinking, like, geez, it's got to be their time. They have to make this their time. It's not going to look good for the Winnipeg Jets if they can't force their way into a roster spot conversation this September, regardless of who gets signed, I think. And that kind of makes me wonder, like, maybe that makes Parker Ford, who's 24, turns 25 this summer. I don't think of that as a prospect age, but he's got a little bit of that two-way curmudgeonliness to him. He might be a bit of an AHL, NHL tweener for most of his career, but he might be well-positioned to win a job as well, just because he plays a little bit of that in-your-face style of play, even at 5'9".
Yeah, but potential changes at the bottom of the lineup. We mentioned last week Rasmus Kupari going to Switzerland. Could there be a spot there for someone waiting and seeing Mason Appleton, his UFA status as well? You look at the teams in the Cup final, and the Florida Panthers, a team that made a bold move in trading, franchise player like Jonathan Huberdeau and acquiring Matthew Tkachuk and Mackenzie Weegar as well. Very, very good player. And you had to if you're the Jets, you have to make a bold move to bolster your roster, second line center. I mean, what do you see that bold move being if you had to put on your GM hat?
Yeah, I mean, assuming it's got to be through trade, right? Like, Winnipeg as a UFA destination, it's a tough sell. Jonathan Toews, that could be pretty cool. And it's a free dart. It's cash only, right? Like, if that works out, they get to try. And that's great. Let's see. What if Colorado suddenly emerges in the Mitch Marner sweepstakes, and now they're running out of cap space and they've got to send somebody out? Would Marty Necas be of interest again to the Winnipeg Jets? Could he be an Ehlers replacement, even though he's a free agent next summer? That's an interesting one. What about? Well, I mean, if you're looking on Winnipeg's roster and you're trying to say, who could we sell high on? I know I've seen it suggested that Gabriel Velarde would be an example. If he's unwilling to sign long-term, could he be somebody who the Jets, what's the term? Just like inflated the value of by virtue of all those number one power play minutes and then trade for somebody of a different style? Maybe. That's not really their style of play, and I'm not really anticipating some trouble on that front. I know last week I told you that somebody had shared the idea, well, geez, Mark Scheifele's 32 years old and you'd be selling at an all-time high based on the season he just had. Why not a trade for somebody like Paterson? And I saw that opinion get absolutely roasted in the chat there.
Yeah.
So that's honestly, the more I've thought about it, despite it, how unpopular that is, I at least get the idea. The guy's super expensive in Paterson, but if he does hit, he's 26 years old, and you get a solid run of a prime-aged player, as opposed to somebody who probably by 34 years old isn't producing anymore. I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying that's Winnipeg's play. It clearly is not and never will be Winnipeg's play. But at least if you're one of those people looking for bold moves, that's got to be a thought. Kyle Connor would be similar to that. They're going to spend so much money on Kyle Connor next summer, or at least on his next contract, and that's virtually a given. Is an offense-first player of his tremendous ability worth more on the trade market than he is as he approaches his 30s on what will probably be a 7 or an 8 year deal? It's unpopular stuff to talk about. It's stuff Winnipeg doesn't do because it values people who are willing to stay. But it is stuff that the Vegases and Floridas would entertain. Kyle Connor's probably a pretty good match for Jonathan Huberdeau, come to think of it, in that trade they made for Matthew Tkachuk. So there are types of trades you could explore, and you would be doing it fully knowing it's not based in reality. That's not the way Winnipeg would operate.
It is, well, hey, it's June 9. We're a couple weeks away from free agency. This would be the time to throw anything at the wall here and see what sticks. And as far as, trying to solve second line center, has the ship sailed on the internal options? Velarde played center before, Perfetti drafted as a center. Any chance the Jets would ever experiment with that?
I mean, I think that they would if circumstances dictated. I really don't think Scott Arniel wants a relatively slower center in Gabriel Velarde or Cole Perfetti anchoring the second line. And I also think that one of the reasons why the second line in its current iteration with Vladislav Nemestikov there, they don't really get a lot of tough minutes. They don't get a lot of defensive zone assignments. And part of that, I think, is that they don't really believe Nemestikov's going to win the faceoff when the time comes. Is Cole Perfetti the face-off solution? They haven't figured it out yet, but probably not based on early returns. Gabriel Velarde might be a touch better there, but then you get into the foot speed problems again. I think it's something they would do if they swing in other center options and then pivot towards acquiring wingers, and that might be what happens. Taves seems realistic for them, but if that's all that they do, maybe Winnipeg's bigger upgrades come, or shopping attempts come on the wing. Will Cully from New York would be a wonderful power forward type example, but there are others that you could explore. Andrew Mangiapane, a two-way sort of truculent player as well. If the upgrades come there and there's no second line solution coming from within, then maybe they pivot back and just accept that that's not going to be a speedy center, isn't going to be how it works.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what these lines we can start making our projected lines. I don't know when's that going to be, mid-July, where we start projecting the roster. But one thing you're projecting over there, the mock draft for the Jets. Did I ask you this on Wednesday about how that is coming together? I think you mentioned, was it you who mentioned Blake Fiddler, or was it Brandon? All the days are going together here.
Someone named Adam B, asked me about Blake Fiddler in my most recent mailbag, and just clearly enamored with the prospect. Whenever I've seen Corey Pronman or Scott Wheeler, any of the draft experts at the NHL, at the Athletic, which is something I think the Athletic does extremely well, is prospects coverage through those two guys. Whenever I see them talk about Fiddler, he's gone before Winnipeg gets its late first round pick. So as much as that's fun to talk about, I don't know. It's tough to imagine. By that stage, it looks like there are going to be a couple of viable defensemen available. It looks like there could even be goaltending options available if Winnipeg wants to go in that particular direction. I've looked at some unique centers. One of my favorite prospects is Mason West, who might be a football player and not a hockey player when all is said and done. But he's huge. He's from Medina, Minnesota, and somebody Winnipeg would be familiar with. That's not who I picked for the Jets in our mock draft, though, which goes up on Wednesday. So stay tuned for that one.
I will have to stay tuned in. It's draft season, free agency season, rumor season, but also Stanley Cup season. Game 3 tonight. I know you got a thought on tonight's game. Who's going to take it?
I'm tempted to say whoever wins Game 3 wins the series. Like, I'm that invested in this moment. I think Florida should feel awfully proud of forcing overtime in 2 games on the road. Like, McDavid and Draisaitl are a matchup nightmare, and Florida didn't have last change, and they made it that close. You have to think Paul Maurice is going to be able to get key players away from McDavid and or Draisaitl at key times, at least every now and again at home. So, yeah, I guess I'm feeling a Panthers win, and remind me that I was wrong if I am.
All right, I will remind you next week when you return to the program. Murat, thanks so much for fitting us into your schedule. Appreciate it and looking forward to your mock draft Wednesday at the Athletic. Always a must read, Murat.
Thanks for having me, Remo.
There he is, Murat Atesh from the Athletic. Follow him on Twitter, Instagram too. He's on all of them. WPG Murat. We ended up talking about the Stanley Cup Final. We're going to head out to Florida right after this with Tyler Yaremchuk from Oilers Nation. But first, here's Huss.
Royal Sports has tons of new, many exclusive pieces of Bomber merch that you won't find anywhere else. Obviously, you've got all the Jets gear right now, a lot of it on sale. Tons of Major League Baseball, Blue Jays, NBA as well in that place. The biggest hockey section 12 months a year. But as we get into summer, soccer, baseball, softball, tennis, the biggest and best selection of athletic shoes you'll find anywhere, and tons of bikes as well, including e-bikes. So get on down to Royal Sports and get ready for summer. 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram as well at Royal Sports Winnipeg. I should mention that Yeti section for everyone that's camping and heading to the beach. They have so many cool Yeti mugs, coolers, you name it. Another great thing to keep in mind before you head out of town over the course of this summer. Tomorrow night, it's Game 1. Panthers, Oilers. Boston Pizza's the place to be with your gang for Stanley Cup playoff hockey. You got the game on all the screens with big sound and, of course, the BP playoff menu featuring the Canadian All-Star Poutine. Wing flights are back. They've got the Scoville Showdown for you crazies that love it hot. And a couple of amazing new pizzas for the playoffs, the Triple Pep and the Wingman Pizza as well. Pop down to Boston Pizza for Game 1 of the playoffs. And hey, if you are staying at home, you can always get the great taste of BP and the new playoff menu by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. A big cheers to our friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
Oh, yeah. 1919, great on the weekend. And a guy who looks like he's enjoying a 1919 right by the pool in sunny Florida, Tyler Yaremchuk, Oilers Nation. Tyler, thank you so much for taking the time to join me. Must be nice here. Back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals for the Oilers. Back-to-back trips for you to Florida. How's it going over there?
If you threw a cold, crispy 1919 in front of me, it would be gone in 6 seconds, maybe 7 if I had to take a second sip. I would delete it. It is hot. It is hot, hot, hot. But again, down for a second straight Stanley Cup final. So I'm certainly lucky to be covering a team that's been going on some pretty long playoff runs. Because I'll be honest, I'm not trying to throw shade here. I heard you talking about like line combinations in June and July, and I was like, oh, I don't miss that. I don't miss having to do that on my Oilers shows.
Yeah, we're talking about draft. Yeah, we hadn't really. I hadn't thought about the draft really because the Jets had the playoffs. Now it's June. I'm starting to think about the draft. we're talking about contracts and next year, but not you. You've got a game 3 tonight. Looking forward to. What are your thoughts on the series so far? 2 games, and how do you compare this to last year's series?
I mean, the Oilers have gotten off to a better start, right? They were down 0-2 last time. It's 1-1 now. So, starting on home ice, it certainly would have been ideal for them to hold serve and have a 2-0 series lead at this point. But this is going to be a tight series. I think the idea that the home teams are just going to win every game when these two teams are so evenly matched, I just don't subscribe to that. So the Oilers lost a game on home ice, and now the attention shifts to they need to find a way to get a split down here in Florida and get home ice advantage back. And I think that's just it's doable. The Oilers have been a very good road team. The matchup thing doesn't scare me as much as it would have a year ago because the Oilers' depth has been so good in these playoffs. So the first 2 games, I almost want to call them predictable in the sense that the Oilers and Panthers played 2 games that were decided by 1 bounce. And when 2 teams on paper, whatever stat you want to look at, however you want to dice it up, it's such a tight matchup that, every game is probably going to come down to a bounce or 2.
Yeah, it could be 2-0 for either side, but here we are, 1-1, evenly matched. And, we had our moment here, Game 7 against the Blues. The Jets tied up in the dying seconds. Crowd went nuts. How was it? Was like being in the building there for Game 2? Corey Perry, 17 seconds left. The Oiler crowd, I mean, they've really took it to another level this playoffs.
Yeah, they have. I'm in the unique spot where I've sat in the press box for a couple of games. I've been in the crowd for a couple of games, and it is no matter where you're sitting, it's deafening. And when Perry scored that goal, it just sent that place into another level. The crowd is so into it, and even in the overtime there were parts of the Oilers crowd that were standing for the whole second overtime period. And I can't remember that ever happening in Edmonton. It's not really a thing this Edmonton crowd does, but it shows you the nerves in this fan base, right? Not that anyone's sitting there going, oh, we don't belong, or it would be a big upset if their Edmonton Oilers won this Stanley Cup and beat the Florida Panthers. But now that the series is 1-1, and as that game obviously got real close and went into overtime, I think you started to get a little bit of a sense that oh man, it's never a guarantee, right? You can sit there and talk about how it would be hard for Florida to beat you in a second straight cup final, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And that Florida team is really, really good. So I do think there are some nerves that have started to, and throughout the process of Game 2, started to creep into this fan base a little bit. And again, it's justified because this Florida team is also really, really good. So again, the nerves, I think that's becoming a thing. And as this team flies back to Florida, the same spot they lost Game 7 last year, Game 3 tonight's going to be a real test on the mental side for this Oilers team, I think.
Yeah, I think myself, even I was like, well, McDavid, destiny to win the Stanley Cup. He saw Gretzky and Crosby, losing and then winning. It's McDavid's turn. They won Game 1, and you wanted to just see them hoist it, but you still got to play the games, and we're heading into Game 3. Not really. The only injury coming in was Zach Hyman injured, but it seems like more guys creeping up. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, is he a game time decision? What's the injury status and any lineup changes here tonight for the Oilers?
So the only one we're watching is Nuge potentially for Jeff Skinner. Nugent-Hopkins skated today. He skated lightly, I would call it. And Jeff Skinner skated real hard. Usually on game days, if a guy goes really hard and over the top and gets a good workout in the morning, that's usually a sign he's not playing that night. So Nuge is going to take warm-ups. My expectation is that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is going to be in the lineup for the Edmonton Oilers. He played that whole game. He played all throughout overtime in Game 2. He maybe took a hit at some point that caused him some discomfort, but I think they're just being cautious right now. So I fully expect Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to play. And then the other lineup note is that the Oilers might be trying out some new D pairings tonight, which I think is needed. The Kulak-Nurse pairing really struggled at points in Game 2. I thought Mattias Ekholm took a little bit of a step back, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ekholm's minutes get knocked down a little bit and the Kulak-Nurse duo gets split up. So a couple changes on the blue line, but in terms of personnel, believe it's going to be the same 18 skaters.
And one player who's really stepped it up, Corey Perry. He's got points in his last 4 games, goals in 3 of the last 4. When they acquired him a couple of years ago, I don't know if you saw him having top line first power play impact. And when he played against the Jets in the 2015 playoffs, you hated this guy. But at 40 years old, you almost got to respect his game a bit more. What have you seen from him elevating here in the Cup final?
Well, I think he's part of the reason why there isn't a bigger conversation about the Zach Hyman injury, because you lose your top line right winger who plays on that top power play unit, and it's a big hole, right? Like Zach Hyman's a key piece for this team. But what do you get? Corey Perry starts playing top line minutes, or continues to play really good top line minutes, I should say. Corey Perry continues to be a guy who's the net front on the power play. He had taken that spot away from Zach Hyman. So the way Perry's producing, the way he's keeping up at 5-on-5, all of this stuff, it's a big reason why you can have a piece like Zach Hyman go out, and it's not a detrimental blow to your Stanley Cup chances. Perry has been magnificent. I didn't like the contract last summer. I said, if you wanted to bring this guy back for league minimum, sure. Giving him anything more than that, I thought was a mistake. I didn't see 20 goals coming. I didn't see a guy who could keep up at this level through another playoff run, because he's 40. Like, that's old by hockey standards, by professional athlete standards. But he continues to blow my mind at every turn. And it's been needed, because, again, if you sit there and you go, man, if Perry wasn't doing this and you were missing Hyman, you start to try to do the gymnastics in this lineup. It's not pretty.
Really, really impressive. I think even my dad, who's been messaging me for talking about hockey, always hating Corey Perry. But I mean, you gotta respect it at this point, going at 40 years old. I know there was questions about goaltending early in the playoffs. Seems like Stuart Skinner has really found his game here as we're entering Game 3, and you're not really having any of those questions at all anymore about goaltending.
And he's one of the big reasons why they've had such a good road record these last 2 rounds, right? You think about Vegas. They win all 3 road games against the Vegas Golden Knights. Against Dallas, they played 1 bad period in Game 1, and then they went and they won the next 2 road games against Dallas. And Stuart Skinner, since they made the change, so since they pulled him against LA in rounds 2 and 3 on the road, .914 save percentage and a goals against average that's below 2. That's not just the Oilers getting passable goaltending. That's the Oilers getting elite goaltending. And that's been the difference. Like, your road record doesn't become 5-1 over 2 rounds of the playoffs if you're not getting elite goaltending. So Skinner's been magnificent. I think he's been real good through 2 games in the Stanley Cup final as well. Basically going what I'd say toe-to-toe with Bobrovsky. Not outplaying him, not getting outplayed, but toe-to-toe with a Stanley Cup champion and Vezina winner in Sergei Bobrovsky. So Skinner's been great, and I think we're kind of past the point of being like, ooh, cross your fingers if you're an Oilers fan. His play might fall off at any second here. Like, no, it's been a month now. Stuart Skinner playing really, really well, and I think you can expect it to continue.
Yeah, looking forward to that tonight's one. And, when Edmonton beat Dallas, you put out a tweet when they advance to the Cup final. If at some point you believe that Mark Arcabella was going to be the answer and you're still here, this win is for you. I mean, what has it been like, the journey from, however many straight first round picks it was to back-to-back Cup final? It's pretty incredible how far this franchise has come.
Yeah, I mean, someone like myself, right? I was born in 1997, and like my formative years as a hockey fan were watching the Oilers come in last every year and going to games in February when they're 15 points out of a playoff spot already. But for some reason, you're still going to watch the team because you want to, because you're just a diehard fan. I'm born and raised in Edmonton, right? It's given me some really interesting reflection points as an Edmontonian, as someone who's loved this team since they were a little kid, now has the privilege of, covering it, talking about them every day, whatever words you want to use. There were points where I convinced myself, Dominic Cahoon can be a fit in the top 6. Mark Arcabello can be an NHL player. And when you get these moments where you're in the Cup final, it's nice to kind of sit there and be like, oh man, all of that losing, all of that stink, being a laughingstock for a decade, it's all worth it if eventually you win a Stanley Cup. And it's all worth it if you become a perennial Stanley Cup contender, not just a perennial playoff team, but a team who going forward, as McDavid signs what we expect to be an extension in July, and they keep this McDavid-Draisaitl era going, every year should be a Stanley Cup or bust year for the Edmonton Oilers. And they've shown this year, even when their roster isn't maybe as good as some other ones, I don't think the roster this year is as good as the roster last year, yet they're back. If you can keep going on runs like this, even when you're maybe in a little bit of a down year, then I think that just shows you're a legitimate perennial Cup contender.
Yeah, I did enjoy that tweet because every team has that player that you believed could be the guy for them, and it always is fun to remember some guys. And heading into Game 3, got a prediction for tonight, where we're going to see, will the Oilers make it 2-1 here?
I think they will. I think if they're going to take one in Florida, you're going to need a real big Stuart Skinner performance. You're going to need him to be better than Bob for a game. So they're going to win one of these next two games in like a 3-1 fashion where they just kind of choke the life out of the Panthers. So I don't know if that's necessarily tonight. I'm not sure if I'm in like oh no, the Oilers got their number. I will say in these playoffs, they have very rarely played back-to-back poor hockey games. Coming off a bit of a poor one. They were not the better team in game 2 against the Florida Panthers. This team bounces back well. Again, they're winning one of these two. I think this series is going to be tied 2-2. If it's tonight, sure. If it's Thursday, sure. They're going to win one, and I think they're going to win a low-scoring game that Stuart Skinner plays really well in.
All right, can't wait. Tyler, stay cool out there in Florida. It's a hot one, so rest up and looking forward to tonight's game. It's got 7 p.m. as the listed start time here, 7 p.m. Central on NHL.com. Really appreciate you, and let everyone know where they can find your content at Oilers Nation and Nation Network /Daily Faceoff.
Yeah, OilersNation.com, Oilers Nation YouTube, Daily Faceoff YouTube. I'm live every day at 11 a.m. Central with Frank Saravalli. We do like a 30-minute daily recap show. So find me on Daily Faceoff, find me on Oilers Nation, and hopefully tomorrow, or hopefully there's still another 10 days left in this series. I'd love to see it go deep.
Perfect. Well, really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you so much, and enjoying all your work there at Oilers Nation and Daily Faceoff.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. There he is, Tyler Yaremchuk. Follow him on X. Tyler Yaremchuk taking in the sun there in Florida, back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals. And what a luxury to not be talking about lines and contracts, just focusing in on the next game. We'll bring back Connor Hrabchak in a second here, but it's time to get to some fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your best option for buying and selling tickets in Winnipeg with no fees. What you see is what you pay. Certainly the best place if you have a pair of extra seats looking to sell them. I can tell you as someone who's had to use Fans First to sell a pair of tickets the odd time utilizing it. So user-friendly, the customer service so great, and you're getting paid the next day right after the game. I know Fans First. Look, you're talking about them for Jets season. Well, Bombers, Thursday night, trending to be a sellout as well. And I know they're busy for the Bombers season as well. You can buy and sell Bombers tickets on Fans First. Let's get to some comments from the chat here. We were talking about Jonathan Taves earlier. Dom Zappia says, guys like Taves with his pedigree aren't coming back to embarrass himself. Guys, ready. Julian Labossiere, I'm skeptical Taves will even have a good bottom 6 impact. Lucas Maciel says, come on, Taves, don't let us down like Nelson did. That's Brock Nelson, who we talked so much about around the trade deadline. Fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, your number one spot for buying and selling tickets by fans for fans with no fees. And Breezy Bend Hustler just had a great weekend at the RBC Canadian Open. All WST golf reports brought to you by Breezy Bend, home of this year's Manitoba Open. Thinking about making Breezy your long-term golf home? Contact Corey Johnson at the clubhouse or visit breezybend.ca for more info to get on the waiting list. And congratulations to the winner in the playoff of the RBC Canadian Open, Ryan Fox, defeating Sam Burns. They tied for minus 18. That's 18 under. Some low scores there at TPC Toronto, and they move on from the Canadian Open to the U.S. Open this weekend. Another major, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow. Hustler going over the odds with Pat Gregoire and Jeff Feinberg, who took in the RBC Canadian Open as well. He'll be bringing the heat Wednesday for what should be another great appearance from Feinberg. And the Gold Eyes, they were rained out yesterday, heading out on the road, but they'll be back next week, and that'll be a great chance to get out to the ballpark, and especially next Thursday, July 19, for the WST patio party at the Gold Eyes game. Still some tickets remaining. winnipegsportstalk.com. We got under 10 if you want to join us on the patio. Click at the top of that for the Gold Eyes tickets. If you want to get tickets to any Gold Eyes game, 204-982-BASE or on their website. Perfect time to catch a game as the weather heats up if you haven't already this season. And Assiniboia Downs live racing resumes tomorrow. We've had some great start to the season. The Downs, they're open every day, though. VLTs, great dining options, free admission, free parking. But if you do want to attend the live race night Tuesday or Wednesday, make a reservation in the clubhouse dining room and enjoy the world-famous prime rib buffet. And make sure you're watching them on YouTube on race nights. Kurt Stretch, they're hitting you with winners. And Hustlers had some big ones. I've had a couple. We're going head-to-head. We'll bring the picks back tomorrow. And speaking of bringing back, Connor Hrabchak is back in the chair, about to hit the Coolbet lines. Connor, thanks for coming. One thing I didn't ask Tyler about, actually, that I should have brought up. Sam Bennett, accidentally on purpose, falling into the goalie. Seems like the guy's pretty strong on his skates, except when he gets touched around the crease. Can they do anything about this? Like, this is, I guess, like, you gotta respect it a little. Like, you would want that guy on your team, but I'm sick of seeing this.
It's a skill. It's a skill as much as on their first goal of the game when he's accidentally on purpose kicking Mattias Ekholm's stick away from him, right? Like, all of these things that are playing with an edge, playing on the line, bending the rules. Sam Bennett is the perfect player for that. He's getting shoved, like he's standing in front of Stuart Skinner and getting shoved to the side, but plants his right foot and falls directly backwards because he's getting pushed. So then half the people think, oh, well, he got pushed in. Well, no, if he doesn't plant his skate into the ice and fall directly backwards, he would actually just get cleared from the front of the net. So it's a skill. Sam Bennett is probably the best player in the league at doing this. And he's like already elbowed a few goalies in the head throughout these playoffs. So clearly a player that is playing with an edge, playing dirty, and is doing a pretty good job at getting away with those things.
Yeah, it's hard. I want to be like, they got a call, but what's the call? Looks like he's getting pushed into the goalie. He's great at doing that. And I haven't liked some of his actions, but he's certainly making an impact. And we are looking forward to seeing what he gets when it comes to the NHL free agency. But we're winding down the show on our Coolbet lines tonight. You got any predictions in terms of making picks for tonight's game? We talked about a number of goal scorers on Friday's show, and with the high scoring nature, I said Perry, and he's getting on the board. We said Sam Bennett has mentioned that he was leading in goals. He got on the board there. Barkov doesn't have a point in this series, plus 210 to score tonight. Marchand plus 245, Corey Perry plus 265. Do you got any selections here for tonight's game?
I've been liking the Corey Perry point. I believe I was looking at Coolbet, and he's plus 105 to get a point tonight. I like that. He's playing with Connor McDavid, and Connor McDavid is like minus 500 or something to get a point because he's Connor McDavid. And if he's playing that, that's an absurd that's an absurd number. Like, it's almost a guarantee that McDavid gets a point. So Corey Perry, is playing on him on the top line. He's playing with him on the top power play unit. The chances that he factors in on one of those points, one of those goals, it's happened in each of the first two games. So I think I'm going to keep riding with Corey Perry anytime point until the wheels fall off on that one. And interesting to see the Panthers being the biggest favorite in a single game of the series so far tonight. The games were pretty close to a pick'em in Edmonton, but almost minus 150 for Florida tonight. Yeah,
that is interesting. And McDavid, I don't think I've ever seen minus 600.
He's even money to get 2 points or over 1.5. These are some wild numbers here. I do like shots on goal. What's Evander Kane at for shots on goal? Well, he's plus 130 for over 2.5 shots on goal. He's a guy who likes to throw it on net. Sometimes I enjoy the shots on goal, but there's been so many goals
in this series. The total 6.5 on this one. I mean, you can have great goaltending, and Bobrovsky and Skinner has been pretty solid. But when you have players like this, like Connor McDavid dancing around Barkov and dangling Aaron Ekblad, you're going to have a lot of goals. And we saw that saw that against Dallas, against a very good goalie in Jay Gottinger.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to see if Stuart Skinner can keep it up, because like Tyler said there, he has been great and he has been playing at a high level for a long time now, to the point where you don't think that the meltdown is coming. But it is Stuart Skinner, so you're always kind of on edge every time he's in the net. So Bobrovsky, we know he's got the pedigree. He's been around a long, long time. You know, Florida's confident in their guys. Same with Edmonton. But there's been so many goals in this series that it feels weird to say the goalies have been strong. So I don't know. Tonight's game, I don't really have a good feel for it. Both these games have gone to OT. Florida, I think Murat was bang on. I do think that, myself included, we've been, planning the parade for the Oilers a little bit. Florida deserves a lot of credit for how well they played in the first 2 games here. So fascinated to see how things turn out tonight. Edmonton is 6-1 in their last 7 road playoff games. So they've been good on the road in these playoffs outside of the first 2 games against LA. Going to be another great matchup tonight, I think.
And I think this is a series where the hockey has been so good that if you're not a hockey fan, or you're not pulling for either team, like I've seen some people comment in chat, that you're compelled to watch because of the entertainment factor. You've had lead changes, you've had last second comebacks, you've had overtime. This really has been a fantastic final. And even if you're not, again, if you don't care about these 2 teams, I think the storylines of, repeat champion, or Connor McDavid winning, or just seeing great players do great things on either side, gives you a reason to watch it. There's no CFL on tonight. The NBA final, that was last night. There's some baseball on, but this is what's on, and we can look at other props. How about NHL draft props? Right now, they've brought him out, Connor. First overall pick? I don't know how they got this. James Hagens plus 600. Any other player minus 1250?
It's because Hagens is from Long Island, where the Islanders play. So it's like he's a long shot to go number 1. But if you think the Islanders are going to go for the hometown kid and take maybe a surpass on Matthew Schaefer, who's the number 1 player, that's the line there.
And then you can bet on who's a top 10 pick, draft position, head-to-head drafting. If you're into draft props, Connor, you big draft prop guy, or I think Chloe
might have to be with the Jets maybe keeping their pick. I mean, I've been very vocal that I want them to move that pick, especially if Nikolai Ehlers is going to be testing the open market. But yeah, this is the player to be drafted first head-to-head. I always find it's interesting because, it's usually players that are very close to one another. And then sometimes it's a defenseman and a forward. So you're, projecting, okay, this team is picking at 8 and they're going to go with the defenseman, even though these 2 players are ranked the same. So all of that stuff is kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah. And looking at some other futures here, these off-season futures are pretty fun. Are pretty fun. Hold on. Jonathan Taves, we talked about him. Who will he sign a contract with? Winnipeg plus 225. So Cam Robinson says he's a favorite, plus 225 seems pretty favorable.
Yeah, that line was plus 250. So maybe that Cam Robinson report moving the line a little bit. I always like doing this, Remo. It's Monday. So we don't have CFL lines for the game this week yet, but with no Zach Collaros, but the Bombers being at home, what's your guess for what the line is for Bombers Lions?
Oh, there's no line yet.
There's no line yet. So what's your guess? What do you think? Oh
man, if I had to guess for Bombers
going to be underdogs with no Zach.
Oh, with no Zach, yeah, I would say Lions plus 2.5.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Lions
minus 2.5.
Lions minus 2.5.
I see that. I see that too. The Lions being like a short favorite on the road because it's Strevler. I don't know. And the Lions looked good, at least in the second half of week 1. It'll be fascinating to see what that line is. I think it'll be a pick 'em or BC will be a short favorite.
Yeah, and just looking ahead to CFL 110 with Hustler and Jeff Hamilton will go tomorrow after the show. A couple matchups this week. Thursday, BC at Winnipeg. And I see some people in chat. BA Split thinks the BC is going to roll over them. I don't know. He just talked to Derek Taylor. He said Bombers have the best defense in the league, and they were able to hold down Nathan Rourke last week. We'll see how it goes on Thursday. They're at home owner BC on a short week. I'm not so sure about that one, but Friday night football and CFL pulling up all the stops this year for Friday night football. We saw Luke Wilson there on the sideline, new graphics, which we talked about. Montreal at Ottawa, looking to bounce back. And Montreal, what a dominant start. Calgary at Toronto on Saturday at afternoon, 3 p.m. Saskatchewan in Hamilton. Hamilton, losing to Calgary. That's Saturday at 6. I did love the Saturday night game, BC Edmonton.
Yes.
We need more. I love Saturday in the summer, 9 p.m. watching CFL. It's the best, and that was the only one we'll have this year.
Watching Nathan Rourke dice up a team that had high expectations, didn't look great. That's what the CFL is all about, right? Is watching the good quarterbacks go to work at home against bad teams. That's fun, and we'll see if Nathan Rourke can follow it up in Winnipeg.
Indoors in the Dome. I love it. Snoop Dogg. There. Credit to Amar Doman bringing the axe. What do we have? Last 50 Cent, LL Cool J. I think it sells out the building. They're there for the concert. I think a lot of people do leave after, but it does bring a lot of positive attention to the BC Lions, and shout out to their social media team and who's put out some great content as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did see that they were having some issues getting people in the building for that Snoop Dogg concert because he was performing before the game. All of these acts usually, Super Bowl halftime show, it's usually at halftime, but Snoop Dogg was before the game. So the lines were crazy. Not a lot of people were getting in on time, but it looked like things worked out in the end, and they had over 50,000 tickets sold for that game for the Snoop Dogg and the home opener. They've done a great job doing that the past couple of years. So good on Amar Doman for making BC Lions football home openers, making them matter, making, having more people come out to those games with the big musical acts.
Yeah. So, hey, we'll have the odds, I'm sure, tomorrow. We'll touch on that CFL 110 with Hustler and Jeff. And hey, you still want to preview the season? The first 2 episodes answering the biggest questions or ask and get answer the biggest questions for each team. We do have U.S. Open odds kicking off this weekend. Scotty Scheffler, big favorite, plus 280. Bryson DeChambeau, John Rahm, Rory McIlroy finished near dead last at our RBC Canadian Open. He's 4th best odds at plus 1,300. So we'll get more into that later in the week. NBA Finals, Connor. When's the next game? June 11th, so that's on Wednesday. OKC minus 213 in series price right now. Still OKC massive favorite, minus 625. Connor, I think we've said it all here. It's been a fun couple days, man. I'm gonna miss it.
I know. I just want to. I always do this, but I gotta shout you out again. It's been a couple of days here, and you've done an incredible job getting people in, doing the behind the scenes work and hosting at the same time. It's very difficult. People don't know how difficult that is. So I got to shout you out, Remo. And it's been a blast being on here the past 4 days. It is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then today. So breaking down Cup Final, CFL. It's been so much fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at the Bomber game this week.
Yeah, Jets news. We've had a lot to discuss. It's been fun, but the countdown is on to the NHL draft, free agency, and Bomber season. Thursday. So fired up to be there in the building for Bombers versus Lions. So
nothing better.
A shout out to the chat, everyone who's stuck around. And if you are still here, please hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button. We are here Monday to Friday, 1 p.m. Podcast as well. If you don't want to look at us, you can just listen on the podcast, the Winnipeg Sports Talk feed. And if you missed it yesterday, WST Sunday Live with Connor and Liz, some big Jets off-season topics. So yeah, looking forward. Tomorrow, Mike McIntyre will join Hustler, and Joey Slattery on the Sea Bears. Some big reinforcements in the lineup. Lost Friday. We're down a lot Saturday. We're able to come back in target time, and they're home for 2 games this week. So a lot of activity here around the city. Jets are off, but there's so much else going on. So Connor, appreciate you coming on. It's been fun chopping it up here, doing a lot of chopping. We're chopping it up here for a couple days. So again, thanks again for coming on.
Nice. It'll be nice to have Huss get back to work. Jeez, that guy's taking so much time off.
To be fair, we don't really take a ton. I'm joking. We haven't taken a ton. A few days here and there. So he can go and enjoy himself on assignment there. Hey, he's taking in sporting events. He's at the Canadian Open. He's at the Blue Jays, at Canada, Ukraine, at BMO Field on Saturday. So exciting time. So again, appreciate you, Connor, and appreciate all the listeners who've come out and said hi in chat. Even the ones that didn't say hi, that just lurked. Those are appreciated as well. And the ones absolutely. And the ones on the podcast that we don't necessarily hear from. Yeah, don't want to look at it.
Who don't want to look at us. Yes. Thank you, everyone, especially tuning in Sunday morning. We really appreciate it, and tuning in here, and looking forward to what you and Huss have cooked up for the rest of the week here, Remo.
Yeah, a lot of Stanley Cup talk, Bombers countdown as well, some Sea Bears too, and of course, Jets offseason. Any morsel of information. Nikolai Ehlers watch. Are we on Jonathan Taves watch as well? NHL trophy leaked picture
fake image.
Yeah. I don't know. We had some people saying that, they put both trophies he was nominated for just for the picture and then took one away. We'll have to wait and see.
I gave it to Draisaitl. Yeah, exactly.
We'll have to see. Anyways, for Connor Hrabchak, I'm Mike Remis. This has been Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. See ya.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.